Hey everybody, Burns from Burns Reviews here. Today we got a very special guest, Elliot from Movie Files. Elliot, how you doing, buddy? And today
Doing
we're
good, man.
today we're talking about the Craft reboot, the Craft Legacy. You can check out both of our reviews right now. We have spoiler-free versions of that if you haven't seen the movie yet, and if not, come back after. We're talking about it right now. All spoilers, you've been warned. So, Elliot, I
Yeah, man.
put this side by side together, or it was like the new one, the old one. Because I'm a fan of the old one. I don't
hmm
know if you've ever watched the original one from '96. Have you seen that recently, or have you seen
Yeah,
it years ago? Or
it's been a while. I definitely still remember, some really good performances from the film, really kind of liking the witchery that's involved and kind of how they used their powers and what the story was all about and how impactful it was in the 90s. And going into this film, I was just like, let's see if this is a cash grab or if they have something to say in this one. So it's been a while since I've seen the 96 version. I'm planning on actually probably revisiting it sooner rather than later, but definitely was a fan of that versus this film that we'll talk about in a little bit.
I'll say this much: looking back, I remember thinking, it was okay. But then I saw a trailer for
hmm
the new one, and this is always a thing that tends to happen. Where I'm like, well, you know what? I have a strong belief that the original is always better, and sometimes it just
hmm
makes me want to go and rewatch the original and just say screw
Right.
it to the rest of all of it. And I'm watching it going, it's not the greatest movie, but as somebody who has a great love of 90s movies, just like the
hmm
style, the aesthetic,
Yeah.
the lack of, I guess, pandering, which a lot of movies tend to have now. It just seems to be like a
Yeah. Yeah.
straightforward story. It's like, okay, this is it's good. And I forgot how good Farrah Uza Balk, I think her name is in that movie.
Oh, it's Nancy. Yeah.
Nancy, yeah, because she actually, I was
Yep.
watching the
Yep.
behind the scenes. She's actually a real Wiccan, and it's kind of why it has like a certain crazy authenticness to it. You actually kind of believe her.
Mm.
She's kind of like the cornerstone of that original movie, um, which is
Yeah,
from
yeah. Besides like the 90s nostalgia, the wardrobe and the messaging of the film, I think she definitely was one of the few characters that came out when people remembered her performance, which I don't think we can say that about this one. But she was
no,
great,
no.
man. Yeah.
She's like, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
It's like, "Oh yeah, Oscar."
Yeah. That last we'll get to that, but yeah, that could have been way more creative to implement her into the storyline. It was just like, did they open the door for another film, which I hope they don't, but Hollywood.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that because
Yeah,
that's
for sure,
literally
for
the
sure.
tail end of the movie.
hmm
But like you said, the original aesthetic was very much like this gothic, hot
hmm
topic, very edgy, I guess, for the time, kind of
Yeah.
film. And this one, somebody put in the comments like, "What in the Forever 21 is this?" Which is kind of funny because you look at them and you're like, "You're right. This is like, what is this? This is not Rebel Rebel.
hmm
This is not. I don't know what this is. This is Disney Channel. This is Pixie Dust." Yeah,
Yeah.
I
It's missing the punch that the original had, and not that it had to repeat and rehash the original, but I think we were fortunate enough to get the early screeners, and I don't know if you read like the press releases from like the crew and the director, and just reading Zoe's comments, the '96 version really resonated with her, right? And I think we can all resonate to like being outcast and finding our own people, and I thought the '96 version that really kind of captured that, but this film, like you said, it almost felt like it was a kind of a kids after school special. There really wasn't a lot of world building. There wasn't a lot of character development within the coven, the three original girls, Frankie, Lors, and I'm forgetting the other one, but it just didn't
you're,
feel like
you're doing better than me.
there's their sisterhood didn't seem that impactful. They didn't really like the film trying to embrace his community and women empowerment, but then something happens in the film where our main character Lily makes a decision, and we'll talk about Timmy and that focusing like entirely the whole first and second half of his storyline, but it just was like a contradiction, and it just was just very PG and just not risky, man, in my opinion.
And that's true. Like I thought it was PG, and then I looked at it. I'm like, oh, I looked at the press release and it said PG-13, and I'm like, really?
hmm
What part of this was PG-13? Maybe when she was like, getting cozy with that sweater. I don't know, but the whole movie just seemed, you know what I mean? Like that was the
Yeah,
only scene
yeah.
where I'm like, oh, this movie's actually going somewhere, kind of. Not really,
hmm
but it
Yeah.
felt very like CW, like Supernatural, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. It felt down to like the CGI that's used in the third act. We'll get to the third act because that's the biggest dumpster fire in the whole movie.
Yeah.
I guess if I want to put it nicely, I think the way that I can sum this movie up, especially in the first 2/3 of it, is that it's, if you're a fan of the original, sorry. It's in universe. I give them credit for not copying point for point exactly. Like I just watched the HBO Max The Witches, and they do that pretty much. There's some other movies like the 2011 version of The Thing. I just watched that recently. It's point for point. Strangers Prey by Night. A lot of them go past homage and just go like point for point for point, credits
rehashing itself.
And if I had to put a positive spin on this, I could say that they went the angle of, say, like Stranger Things meets Cobra Kai. That's being generous. Like it's super cheesy and it's completely different beast, but I give them credit for not doing it exactly like the original movie.
Yeah, I mean, we start off, we meet Lily and her mom, and we're just thrown into the situation where they assume they're moving across country to move in with Adam and his sons, and we're just like, okay, I guess this is it. This is the movie. We're right into it. And yeah, it doesn't necessarily go point by point of the original, but you do have the rehashing of the outsider comes in. They see that she has powers, and if she joins forces with them, they'll have their Wiccan, they'll have their coven all together, and it kind of has that familiarity to it. And you see the montages of them using their powers, which I found that to be very, you talked about Forever 21. That was like very Disney Channel of them just using the powers for makeup and using it to take baths and using it to just do very kiddie things, which again, the original has some of that to it, but again, it had a lot of edge to it. They used their magics to, combat bullies, which we only get one in this film. And Timmy, man, I guess we can kind of go into that. What did you think about the Timmy character?
Well, starting on the positive foot first, I think the actor did a decent job.
I agree.
I'll give him that. I didn't expect it. I thought for sure it was going to be just like Skeet Ulrich from the first one, where it'd be like, all right, he's the abusive guy, and he, so originality, I'll give it a point, but overall, it's kind of like, what are we doing, guys? I thought he had more development than some of the witches.
1000%, man. And that's what, going back to just underdevelopment of the story, we spend so much time on one spell, which is casting this misogynistic bully that makes fun of Lily on her first day of school. You see it in the trailer where she has her period, makes fun of her, and then we learn that he has a mom that passed away, and that he uses this Ouija board to communicate with her. And then this spell that they cast with him, he goes from less of this barbaric kind of misogynistic male toxicity character to more of a sympathetic, and you find out that he's actually bisexual, which was, like you just said, was very different from the original and very different from your stereotypical villain per se, or high school bully. So that was nice, but there's no payoff. We find out he's killed by Adam in his sleep, or however he killed him.
Glossed over.
Literally, we have a quick little funeral get together of it, but there's nothing that comes of it. Like they don't find out that Adam was responsible. He doesn't have obviously he's dead, but it's just like, there's no payoff for that character. And we spend so much time on that one character, and he doesn't get any payoff for it.
There was a moment where I thought he was going to actually join. When they show him walking, he's like in the yellow hoodie, and I'm like, is he going to join the coven? That'll be interesting. I don't know. It was like, I don't love how flat the witches actually were. I felt like you could have kind of feed any of them a line of dialogue, and it didn't really matter who. They were not distinctive from one another. I kind of talked about this in my review a little bit. If you remember in the first one, they each had like characteristics that made them kind of distinctive. Like Neve Campbell had the scars on her back, so she wanted to be beautiful. Nancy had the issues of, she had the abusive stepfather in the trailer home. And then the last girl was being picked on by the blonde girl from Dodgeball. She was like picking on her. She was racist. She could like saying all this stuff. And it was like, so you totally understood like where these characters were coming from and why they were doing what they were doing. These characters, their biggest complaint in the movie was like, well, we need a fourth, and nobody wants to sit with us at lunch. You can sit with us. But they seem like they have an okay existence. It doesn't really seem to make sense as to why they need to be doing this. and the motivation is not there for me.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. I mean, literally in the first one, the girls, the coven, they embrace being weirdos as we see the iconic scene of them coming out of the bus. We are the weirdos, right? And they throw that line in this film, but it's just like you just said. Where's the struggle? Where's the motivations? Where's the, like you just mentioned, what's the home life like for the Lores, Frankie, Tammy character, which I think Tammy, which is played by Simone or Lovie Simone. I thought she, out of all of the characters, minus Lily, I thought she had the most personality. Like she was at least fun, was having a little bit of fun in the role and poking jokes. She was kind of like the levity of the group. But outside of that, the other two girls were just there. Like they had
cardboard cutouts.
Yeah, they had no. And then the girl that that played Frankie, she was in Blockers a couple years ago, and I thought she was pretty funny in that film. And then in this film, they kind of again use her as just like comic relief, and a lot of the jokes to me just kind of fell flat. But yeah, they just lack personality, man.
Do you think that there were like reshoots with this movie? Because I was watching the trailer again, and I noticed there was a lot of scenes that were taken out, alternate takes where things are used differently. That cheesy line of "Hey, Mister, we're the weirdos." That's repurposed. I actually like the version in the movie a little better because in the trailer you're like, "What is this?" But that was the most cringiest scene in the trailer. It was like they just left Forever 21 and they're like, "We're the weirdos, Dad."
Yeah.
And it's like, what are you doing, guys?
Yeah, I mean, with a lot of your Hollywood films, of course, we expect a reshoot. I don't know if there were reshoots with everything with COVID-19, so I don't know if they were planning on doing reshoots. And they just had to use whatever footage they had from whenever they shot it a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years ago. But yeah, man, it just seemed to me, and not to put all the blame on a director, but I think Zoe Jones, who's an actress, a producer, she wears a lot of different hats in Hollywood. This is, from what I gathered in my research, I think this is her first time really doing this type of film with her being the writer and director. I think it was just a little bit too much on her plate. I think she had the appreciation of the original. She tried to implement that into the film, but it just didn't pan out, man. I think the script was just really poorly written. I thought the direction was kind of lackluster at best or mediocre, just from the minute details of like the editing choices, the lack of personality in the score and the soundtrack, and it just lacked punch.
I didn't even think about the soundtrack because I didn't notice it.
It's really non-existent. Yeah, it's non-existent, man.
Yeah, I was looking into that actually because I realized they didn't bring back the original writer-director. But then again, if you look at his filmography, he didn't go on to do anything good. He just made bad movie after bad movie. So I get that. As far as the person who was in charge of this one, she's more or less an actress. She made one movie. I haven't seen it. I watched a trailer for it. Yeah. The setup of that movie is that it's a quirky movie about a couple who are like on the rocks of their marriage, who decide to start a band and sing their fights via song. And it's a quirky movie.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right, I think it's called Band-Aid or something like that. But But with that said, it's nothing that makes you go, here are the keys to a franchise or a movie that people like. It makes no sense. No disrespect to her, but like, you haven't earned your stripes to be like, hey, here's them. But then again, I guess Blumhouse is just churning out that moneymaker, man.
Yeah, man, I think it's one of those scenarios where, again, you notice a lot of these first-time directors, whether they start off in a small independent film, like you just mentioned, sound like it might have been a personal story for her, maybe. But then they either go indie, book smart, Olivia Wilde route, or they go horror film. And that seems to be like when people want to get their feet wet in the industry, they go to those two genres. And I think that she maybe should have had maybe a couple more projects under her belt, whether it be an anthology type of thing where she directs like a small independent type of horror film and then gravitate towards this, but then just to throw her in the mix of this, again, kind of beloved film in 96. A lot of people consider it a cult classic. I think it was just a little bit too overwhelming. I think she just didn't have the gravitas to bring this type of story to the big screen. I thought she kind of was, the script what she wrote was the weakest part of the film, in my opinion.
It did feel very like thinly layered. It didn't feel like it had any depth. There's nothing memorable in this movie. I probably won't remember it come tomorrow.
I've pretty much forgotten most of the movie myself. Yeah, to be honest.
And I'm reading the synopsis on Wikipedia, and it says like a horror film, and I'm like, there wasn't a single scare in this entire movie, not one.
Which brings me to the most random scene. It was either Nathan or whatever the son that was involved with Timmy's character. He's sleepwalking. He goes in Lily's room, and that's like a horror setup that there's someone in her room and he's sleepwalking and there's no nothing. He's just sleepwalking. That was like the only like jump scary moment in the entire film, and it made no sense.
And that's never followed up on. That's never
Never.
like paid off. It's just like a throwaway. What the fuck? It's like, all right,
Yeah.
so, I don't know. It's a mess. It's a really big mess.
Yeah.
I would be intrigued if they did do a follow up, which I hate to say in a lot of ways because I know if it's done with the same people, they'll just abuse this one too. Do you know what I mean? Like even if this team got back Nev Campbell, for all of them,
Yeah.
like if they keep going the way they're going, you need
Yeah.
someone edgier to kind of like revamp it to the way it was, or at least blend the two.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what comes of it. As you mentioned earlier, Blumhouse tends to do movies on the really cheap level, and they end up making a pretty good profit. So we saw that with Happy Death Day. We obviously see that with Halloween, which I'm excited for. And they tend to, like I said, they make a movie for 5 or 6 million and end up making, 40, 50, 60 at the box office. But now with no box office, it'll be interesting to see if people will pay the $20, $25 for this film.
I wouldn't recommend that. I can't say no.
Yeah.
I don't mean to be mean, but I'm like, it's just not, unless you're like a 10-year-old girl and you're not expecting it to be the original movie. And I mean, It's a small niche, but to the general public, I can't. I want to talk about a couple of things that didn't really seem to add up as far as the plot. Maybe you caught this. It kind of, the three boys that David Duchovny had, Adam, they seem to kind of like come and go on the screen constantly. I know Timmy wasn't one of them, right? No, he wasn't. He could, no, absolutely not. But Timmy was bisexual, and he said that he was hooking up with Isaiah, or he did hook up with Isaiah. Isaiah was one of Adam's sons, right?
Right. He was the oldest son who, when they went over to the house in the middle of the movie, he was playing the video games. And then once Timmy came in the living room, he was like, "Oh, I got to go. I don't want to be here with you guys." Like alluding to, again, their relationship has kind of been in a weird place since they hooked up, whenever that was.
Okay. See, it was so unnuanced that I never would have put that together. It's so like, oh, this is your scene and action. And they just kind of did it on the fly. It never felt like
what they should have did is Lily earlier in the film, she hears some weird sounds going off in the house, and you think that it's Adam having an affair on her mom, and you're like, oh, she's gonna find out, and she's gonna want to tell the mom. She's not gonna believe her and go down that route. But no, it was I don't think it was Isaiah. I think it was the second oldest. He was pleasuring himself to pornography on his computer. But I thought that would have been interesting if they would have showed Isaiah and Timmy hooking up in that scene, because it'd be like, oh, so Timmy's the bully, but he's gay. But they didn't go that route.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be David Duchovny and Michelle Monaghan getting it on. And in my head, I'm like, I know what this is. I know what the setup is. I mean, part of me is going, there's no bouncing noise. Like, it's just a girl screaming. So I'm like, this is not even well done. And I'm like, well, okay. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, this is such a cheap, can we move past this kind of moment? So there's that. And then, so I guess Adam killed him because he didn't fall in line with what his belief system was, which was kind of a mess too. Adam is like this like Tony Robbins guy, public speaker who does well, that's my second question for you, is that in the end we find out that he's like this like toxic masculinity, like this very 1950s kind of way of men should be kings bullshit, what have you. My question is this: is that what he was preaching in his onstage webinars type of deal, or is he preaching the exact opposite of that, but was secretly like an asshole? Like,
we never dove into that. There's a scene where Lily goes in his office, reads one of his books, and I thought it was going to maybe indicate what you just mentioned, what side of the fence he was on. Was he just like, men, rah, rah, women should be taking orders from us? Or if it was the reverse of that and trying to like show off that he's like, equality is everything, men and women should be equal. They really didn't really dive into that outside of them giving us the last moment that he's some pagan warlock, and he's been doing this. I don't know if he used his warlock abilities to like influence people to buy in his book to get famous. Again, David Duchovny was the worst written character probably in the entire year, if I'm being honest, because they rely on the third act for him to be this big bad villain, and they don't even explore his characteristics or give us a reason outside of them look, I'm all about the films having somewhat of a message in their film, but the way they presented this character, where he was just, he hated women. Women had to come in line with his orders, or else, or even if you're a man and you go against him, he's going to kill you. Like, it was just such a on the nose, not nuanced, not developed, just a bad written character, to be
Yeah,
frank.
and he didn't do any justice. Like even in the scenes leading up to it, where he's
Yeah.
kind of scolding everybody and kind of
Mm-hmm.
in the opening scene when they first meet him, he's
Mm-hmm.
very David Duchovny-esque. Like if you've ever
Right.
seen Californication, whatever, X-Files, he's kind
X-Files,
of
that's
like
my jam.
charming and
Yeah.
whatever. But then I
Yeah.
guess like past like the first hour or half hour, they're like, oh, we gotta turn on that switch. And it's
Mm-hmm.
just awful, man. It's so bad.
and
Um,
and I feel like even David Duchovny knew that this was so underwritten, and it kind of plays in his delivering of the lines, and like he just kind of melded in, like, oh, you need to listen to me. Like, it was just like that third act of him in the battle sequence, that last Airbender special effects. That was just it. He melded it in, because at that point I thought he was just like, oh, this is just okay. This is the character I'm going to be. I'm just going to be as dull as it is on the paper.
it does kind of feel like maybe he thought it was something different when he first
Mm-hmm.
signed up, and then
Mm-hmm.
maybe he got on set and he did his thing, and people kept telling him, "Oh no, 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 we need you to act this way," and
Yeah.
eventually he just threw his hands up and said, "Fine, whatever, let's get it over with." Because you're right, it did feel very like I don't know if he didn't want to be there or if he just was like you said, maybe he's just doing like a quick buck. I don't know, but it was just I got to blame the writer director because
Yeah.
somebody should have been. He's not a bad actor. I
Not
haven't.
at all.
Do you know what I mean? Like somebody, you can mold that clay into something good. But
Right.
if you're acting goofy, then forget it.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say that had to be the worst visual effect. That transformation. Holy shit! This is why I want to do the spoiler talk so I can get this out and talk to somebody about it. That slow transformation from A to B.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, I have apps on my phone that could do that and look better. You know, it's like I think that's like a filter on Snapchat, and I'm like, it took like 3 minutes for it to happen. I'm
Yeah.
like, it was unintentionally funny, and from
Yeah.
that moment on, it was just a roller coaster downhill. I was like, oh, we're fucked.
And are we talking about the same scene, of the funeral when it's revealed that the mom was
Yeah.
impersonating her? Yeah, and that switch. And by the way, like, she dodges the hit. Then I thought that she like poofed to another area, but she, like, I guess just like moved 2 inches away from when he tried to grab her, and then he like happened to be the choreograph. That was just like you just mentioned. It was bad, pretty
Oh
bad.
no, I'm not talking about her falling. I'm talking about him transferring, turning from Michelle Monaghan into David
Yeah, no,
Duchovny.
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
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 like
yeah.
when he tries to hit her at first, she like vanishes or ducks away or whatever, and you assume that she like transported somewhere else to be safe, but no, she only moved like 2 inches away from him. And he knocks her out and like puts her randomly in the middle of the forest.
And they transition with like a Street Fighter 2 of like KO, and you're like, get the fuck out of it. This isn't Scott Pilgrim, motherfucker. What are we doing?
And then we get, perfectly written in a script that, oh, where's my mom? Oh, she's hidden somewhere and locked up and tied up. It's just
She's
like,
tied
this is
up,
now a Lifetime movie, I guess.
Much like your other mom, which how
Yeah.
do you how do you know anything about that? It just it's lazy. It's painful, man. I'm watching it. Well, I was laughing too, so I was like, this is so bad.
Yeah. And you say like you've seen the original much more recently than I had. Did Nancy was she pregnant at the end of that film? Like,
Nope.
is it alluding that, okay, so I was gonna say, so is this film alluding that
So-
Dave Duchovny maybe is that her dad? Like, who I don't know if that's something that they want to
unclear.
propose to us.
So what I put together, because this is like the things I do, my movie nerd brain does, is that Nancy in 1996, that's where the movie ended, obviously. And I guess if you like subtract like 17 or 18 years from present day, there was like a 7-year window between her being institutionalized and then having a child. So she could have been on early release and then met a man and then had a child and then got back in the loony bin, or it's kind of open-ended. It does make you wonder. It's like, if you remember the first movie, I don't know if she would have gotten out, period, let alone to have a child. And unless like there's some bullshit about like she cast a spell to get pregnant, it's really messy and it doesn't really work.
Yeah, because
it's kind of.
I'm thinking of Adam's, the son, the littlest son, talking to Lily, saying, oh, my mom died, and I don't know if, like I said, if David Duchovny, if he killed his wife, or if it was Nancy that, like, I don't know. I literally do not know what the situation was. There was, again, lack of development within the story and its characters.
Yeah, it's very ambiguous. It's kind of like that scene in
Right.
Joker when he's like looking at the file. It's like they purposely don't show you a lot because it's like, well, we're not going to shoot ourselves in the
Leave it
foot
up to your
by
imagination.
yeah. We
Yeah.
also don't run the risk of like being stupid if we do it that way.
Right.
I I think it actually would have been better because this is what I thought was going to happen mid transformation because it seemed to go for like 30 seconds. I thought for sure that she was going to transform into Nancy. That would have been an okay twist. Like maybe she got out of the institution. She's been wearing this face the entire time because that's kind of something introduced in the original movie. They can kind of like
shapeshift. They even say it in this movie. Yeah.
So if you found out that Michelle Monaghan was Nancy the entire time and she'd been doing this for like a couple of years, that works in my head. This is awful. This doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, again, going back to your illusion of maybe reshoots, maybe that was something creatively that they had in mind, but they just didn't have the. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. They didn't have the time to add that in and make
the company was like, "No, I will be transforming.
I will be." Yeah, that's the only interesting thing you guys gave me in this whole script, so I want to do this.
Oh yeah, and then we finally get to like the third act where they unbond all of them, which I thought was. That's what I'm saying too. Yeah, barely an inconvenience. Yeah, seriously. That was another thing. What I'm saying as far as like it's one of those movies where all the characters are the same and flat. You can interchange them. They every decision is like made as a whole. They're like, well, we should all just bond all of us. We should bond all of us, and like no feedback, no pushback. It's just like, yeah, okay, and they do it. I'm like,
again, like you said, like we don't unbond it because I'm using a spell to help my mom fight cancer. I'm using a spell to help pay our monthly bills that we can't afford. It's like we don't get it. It's just like, nah, we tried it. We don't want it anymore.
Well, they all seem to have charmed lives. It seems like, I mean, apparently. Short of not being popular, it seems like they're kind of okay. I mean, we don't know. We don't get any backstory. We don't meet any of their family. Exactly. And yeah, and it just feels very flat. They bond her and then unbond her, and what has to be like a 5 minute of runtime of the film. Yeah. There's not a lot of time between bonding and unbonding, and it's like, all right, then what was the point of this? I guess just to show up in the third act and be like, we're back and we're sisters, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, and look, man, to give a little bit of credit to the messy, convoluted message of women empowerment, finding your group of people, standing behind each other, it kind of contradicts itself because, again, once Lily makes that decision to cast her own spell and they just blame her for the death of Timmy, then they just leave her in the shadows and just, like you just said, bond her away. She's like, well, aren't we about empowering each other? And yes, she made a mistake, but
they turn on her quick.
Very quick.
Which and it's not it doesn't really, it's jarring to watch because you're like, 1 minute we're like, hey, we're fucking around, we're having a good time, we're all doing shit, and then we're like, that was uncool, you don't say that, you don't do that, you don't. I'm like, what happened? I don't know.
Left on the cutting room floor again. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt, I guess.
Complete lack of antagonists too. Like, how do you not make one of the antagonists? Like, there's nobody to stand in for Nancy, which was interesting.
I think, again, going back to you saying, applauding the originality, they probably thought that would be too unoriginal to probably do that, to have one of them turn. But again, there's no setup for none of them. They all seem like just nice people. None of them had any alternative motives. None of them had any, corruption involved. They were all just the nicest witches you can ever meet.
Yeah, let them have powers. I mean, if they occasionally kill one guy, they didn't even kill him. That was Adam. They really did nothing wrong. They're basically superheroes.
Pretty much. The only thing they did wrong was the one girl, Tammy. She violated the school locker by burning the name in her burning powers. That was the only thing that they did that might have been a shame on them.
Yeah, but kids without powers do worse. Do you know what I mean? Like,
which is another thing. It's like you have this whole high school of students and no one has any, like, besides Timmy and besides the girl at the party saying, oh, you dressed up. Like, there's no world building at all. It's just like background actors, no other characters to get involved. It's just, again, it's just like, it seemed like they had like a mandated, you have to get under, you have to tell your story in like an hour and a half and just throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks. It was just like there's no world building at all.
Here's a budget of $500,000.
Yeah, make a movie.
Yeah, just go film it at our house. We have houses. Go film them. No, yeah, we'll fix it in post. Yeah, I don't. And then the third act is, Duchovny gets like, they make his eyes black, which you and me could do in our editor right now. It's the cheesiest green screen type of bullshit. And he's got like the little orb around him, and it's like, all right, and then they light him on fire. That's right. They
light him on fire. Yeah, they killed. There you go. They killed a man who was a bad guy, but I guess there's no consequences for murdering people in this world because he's this big, profound, author of books and this big entrepreneur. He's dead. No consequences.
Oh yeah, because you're right. Yeah, that's a good point. He's kind of like the Tony Robbins of his universe. Nobody's looking for him. No one's missing him. No, just
Lily goes to visit her mom, and they're out just having a ball and poking jokes. There's no stakes in this movie at all.
Get in the car. We're gonna go visit your real mom. It'll be great. I have another question that I was kind of wondering, like your take of it. In the very beginning, when they're driving in, and Alanis Morissette's "One Hand in My Pocket" is playing, and they're singing along and whatnot. All of a sudden, the girl just starts crying, and the mom is like,
"I forgot about that."
Yeah, and the mom is like, oh, "I'm sorry," and I thought this was gonna be like a tie-in to like
I totally forgot about that.
I thought it was reshoots. I thought it was gonna be like, oh, well, this is a song me and my dad used to sing, and he's dead now. I'm like, the way she was acting. Like the song seemed to trigger her to a memory, and then never paid off, never brought up. She kind of says, the mom, like, I know moving here is rough, but that doesn't really make sense in the context they're presenting it in.
Dude, just to go again with me just kind of burying this deep into my subconscious and I even remember something like that. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, I forgot that she like literally had a breakdown in the car because you assume, it was like some type of, she left her friends at home. She never met her dad, or like you said, this is the song that her dad played when we don't get any of it. She's just crying.
Yep.
She's just crying because she's across country, or maybe they don't even live across country. Maybe they're just literally moving 5 minutes up the street and she's just mad because she's asked to move. Like, we don't know. We just don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that seems probable. I mean, I don't think if she met David Duchovny, he probably didn't live that far away. Yeah. If they were dating and decide to live together now. I mean, I could be wrong, but again, unclear.
Unknown, man.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. I'm trying to talk about this movie, but it's quickly fading from my memory, so I apologize.
Yeah, no, man. Again, this film managed to cast a spell on us, where it's just like it's a very forgettable movie. It's nothing to really, write home about or remember. I think that at the end of the day, they try to, I mentioned it in my review. Is this another cash grab for the Hollywood playing on nostalgia, which I think it was. Like, I don't think there was any point of making this movie. There is nothing in this film that says, this needs to be made in 2020 because it has this message of outcasters and how we should embrace it. Like it tries to do that, but it fails miserably at doing so. So to me, this was just another prime example of Hollywood just, hey, that film in the 90s that people seem to like, you guys want to make a sequel about it? Yeah, let's do it. Instead of making an original, which I thought this film could have been even better if it was just literally a YA movie. And they could take out the magic because the magic was barely in the movie.
And bad.
Yeah. So they could have just made an independent movie about girls coming of age and coming into their own and having this journey of self-discovery. But no, let's just slap the craft legacy on there so we can sell tickets and not have anything to do besides a 5-second cameo of a character from the original movie.
And when you look at it, you're not even really excited to like see her in the sequel. I'm like, no. I think we've missed the boat. This should have been done 10 years ago, if not even longer. It's like I don't know if.
Again, I'm not a diehard Crabs fan, but I wonder if the fans of this film felt like how the people of T2 felt with John Connor being killed off so quickly and Dark Fate, like how it was just like the first. He was in there for 2 seconds, and it wasn't even him, let alone the actor. At least they give them credit for not de-aging her or recasting her. Or maybe it would have been even worse if they would have been like, they went into the room and you just see the back of her, and she doesn't turn around. You just hear the voice, which I thought they were going to just do the voice and just have Lily just stand in front of her silhouette and not even see her face. At least they showed her. But I don't know. I wonder how the diehard fans feel about her appearance, Nancy's appearance, just being there for literally 0.2 seconds.
And I even paused it to see like if there was anything in that room that was kind of cool, like any type of token or witchcraft or nothing. Because if you're, I mean, I watched the movie recently. I'm not like a giant fan, but just because I watched it recently, when we left off, she was like wailing around in a straitjacket, saying that I'm flying, and her face was cut up. She kind of looked like the girl in The Exorcist. She was really out there. And then she's in this one, like, well, she's wearing black. She looks like she just got back from a funeral, and she's kind of just like looking at the ground. And she's actually got like a pair of flip flops, which you kind of look at and go, this bitch would never wear those flip flops. They're like white and pink flip flops, just chilling. Like it was like the set director. Oh yeah, put that in there. That
was the last day of the shoot. They had 30 minutes to wrap this film up. They called her up. They got their agent on the phone. They brought her in. They literally just shot her in her street clothes. That's exactly what happened, or at least it felt that way.
I think you've talked me into lowering my score on this movie. I think I was like too generous. I was all jazzed. I was like, I got my streaming link, and I'm like, I'm watching it, and I'm like, and then there's always that recency bias, like when you just finish a movie where you're like, it's not so bad, and then a day goes by, or if not sooner, you're like, it was not good. That was.
I wish I would have notated it in my notes when I was watching it, but there was a moment in the film where I'm just like, oh, I'm checked out at this point. I can't remember exactly when it happened. I think it was more or less when we don't get to meet the witches, and it's just like a montage. It's just a kid's kind of poppy film, and I'm just like, oh, okay, this film is not taking any risk. There's no circumstances. These characters are undeveloped. So that was probably about 30 minutes in where I'm just like, okay, this movie is going downhill from here.
Because you said that, I think that they realized that scene with the bathtub was super cringy in the trailer, and they quickly edited it down into a montage. Because in the trailer, she's like, oh, we made this bath for you to celebrate you. And she's like, why would you want to celebrate me? And then you look, and it's so bad. So I'm sure some editor or the production team was like, look, we got some notes. Yeah. People don't like this shit. We're going to bring a different editor in maybe. And we're just print it and ship it. Best we can do right now. Pandemic, people will watch it. So I don't want to take up any more time. I know we've been going close to an hour now, but before we wrap it up, let me ask you a quick question. What is one movie that you think would be a good watch that actually was like this type of genre of reboot, remake, rehash? Like, is there anything that actually do exist? It's rough. I mean, you could say no, that's fine, but do you think this is a thing that people should stop doing because it's just not?
So something that really does come to mind is 2013's Fede Alvarez Evil Dead, which might be crazy to say, but I enjoy that more than I do the original. And I love Sam Raimi. I love, obviously all the characters that we get there with Ash, but I think Fede Alvarez really kind of took the template of the Evil Dead, the Book of the Dead and all that stuff, but just amped it up to another level. The blood levels, Mia's character was so awesome. So that is a film that I actually like the remake more than I do the original. Texas Chainsaw Massacre to me was a good remake, not as good as the original, but that's something I really liked. The Hills Have Eyes comes to mind, and I'm trying to think of something maybe a little bit more recent. The Invisible Man, maybe. I saw a lot of those classic, the Draculas of the world, and the Black Lagoon, but
that's hardly the same movie though. I mean, I know what you're saying because it is. It's like that's an outliner, that's an outlier for sure. And that's a good point. I just watched both Evil Dead movies. The second one's way better than the first one. First one's fine. Second one's kind of like a masterpiece, but it's it's funny. It's kind of like the inverse of this, where they took something kind of campy and PG and kind of whatever, and they made it very gritty and dark and sinister. This is like the inverse of that, where it's like they made it very light. The Diet Coke.
More, I guess, accessible for younger audiences. And again, we're men. We might not be able to appreciate some of the sentiments of, again, the women empowerment within the film. So maybe the younger generation of females that are coming up might like this more accessible, less dark and grimmy. I mean, literally in the first one, there's a scene where a girl's getting assaulted, so I mean, maybe they wanted to make it a little bit more accessible to the younger audience, which maybe they accomplished that, and maybe younger girls and men of that matter, or boys, young teenage boys, maybe like this film because it's not as grim and dark and as serious as the original. I don't know.
It did feel like well, for one, I feel like a TV movie or a TV show. But then the way it's written almost felt like a reality show on MTV.
Yeah.
Like that kind of drama, that kind of like, you know, poorly written TV drama that's kind of like, all right, we're doing that. Good, solid choices. And what did you say after Evil Dead? You said
The Hills Has Eyes was kind of a good kind of remake to me, as well as 2003's Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes, the one with like that Jessica Biel, right?
Rehash.
I actually, and this is not a popular opinion, I actually prefer that one. I've only watched the Texas Chainsaw like once or twice. It was a long time ago. Maybe we have to watch it again. I remember watching it going, I hate that guy in the wheelchair who's squealing like a pig, who's complaining the entire movie. And the new one's just gnarly, and I dig it. You know? Well, my friend, I don't want to hold up any more of your time talking about this god-awful movie. Why don't you tell the good people where people can find you?
Yeah, no doubt, man. Hey, it was a fun time talking about a film that we both didn't seem to really like that much, but it was still fun, the conversation, right? And that's the beauty of film. You can even have conversations about the bad movies more so than you do the good ones. But no, I appreciate you having me on, man. And you guys can find me here on YouTube at Movie Files talking about movies like The Witch, The Witches, as you say, or talking like things like this, The Craft, and many other things, TV show coverage, live streams, all that fun things. So definitely check me out on YouTube at Movie Files.
Awesome. Elliot, my friend, thank you for joining us on the show. I've been John. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, check out Elliot's channel, and we will see you next time.